Good morning, Sarasota and Bradenton. Welcome to The Detail. I am your host, Cathy Antunes, coming to you from my home office, as we are these days. And if you're joining us online, you can go to Facebook Live and watch this video. You are listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota, Florida, and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. With me today, we're talking about the District 1 County Commission race, and candidate Mike Hutchinson is running for District 1. He is challenging incumbent Mike Moran. So this is the battle of the Mikes, Mike Hutchinson and Mike Moran. Mike, thank you so much for being with us.
Good morning, Cathy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I always ask candidates to give us a bit about their background. For someone who's never met you, doesn't know you, who are you? What do you want voters to know about your background, and why are you running?
All right. First part, my background, I'm an Air Force brat. My dad was career military. By the time I graduated high school, I'd had 16 addresses, I think it was. Graduated high school in Bangkok, Thailand. Went to Virginia Tech. I got a degree in political science and went to work for the Department of Defense as a computer programmer. So back in the beginnings of computers, there weren't too many degrees being given out, so they were looking for liberal arts majors, and that's how I got started in computer programming. From the Department of Defense, I came to Sarasota in 1973. To go to work at a company called EMR at the time. Their last name when they left Sarasota last year was L3. I worked in what was called telemetry. I worked the last 8 years on the black boxes they're always looking for after an airplane crash or one of those type of events. Since I guess, about 2010, I started getting involved in politics. I started supporting the Republican Party. I mostly worked events with my wife. We worked all the major events that came to town, and pretty much in the background. Then about a year ago, I got involved with something called Keep the Country Country, which has to do with rural things. I had worked a little bit on a couple of issues with development out east. I live east of the interstate. And so I got involved with Keep the Country Country and started paying a little more attention to those issues. Soon thereafter, some events occurred in the Republican Party that I wasn't real happy with. And so out of the blue in March, I decided to run for office. Basically, the three things caused that. One was the development out east, which I thought was getting a little bit out of hand. Two, I learned of a $5 million transfer from the utility department in their maintenance budget to their capital budget to help out a hamlet that's going into the neighborhood next to us. And basically, the developer was supposed to pay to run the water and sewer lines, and for some reason, the utility department decided to help him out, pay to run the lines, and worry about getting money back later on down the road. That was the second issue that got me a little bit excited. I didn't think the taxpayers or the customers of the water system should be helping developers. And then the last item was the redistricting. I was not very impressed with how the Republican Party, I'm a dedicated Republican, but how they handle that. So that was the last straw when I found out that they not only gerrymandering's not the right word, but they cut out Fred Atkins. They also cut out Frank DeCicco, who was also another possible competitor. So I decided it was time for somebody to stand up and run.
Okay. So I want to unpack a lot of what you've just talked about. But first, because there has been redistricting, Mike, for our listeners, and to be clear, this is the Republican primary. So you are running against the incumbent, Mike Moran, who we did ask, and he declined to join us. So we're spending our time with you. But the boundaries are different. So can you tell the audience where the boundaries for District 1 are?
Sure, I can give you a rough idea. Actually, they're they're a little rough on one edge. So they run from the East County all the way out at Verner Road in that area, the northern edge of the Mayaka Park, east to roughly Tuttle. And they run from the northern boundary of the county, which is quite often University, down to Clark Road. Along the western edge, it's sort of ragged. There's actually precincts that are divided between District 1 and District 2. But it's the northeast quadrant of Sarasota County.
Okay, so as you say, it's much of rural Sarasota, right?
Correct.
Lots of, our farms out there, ranches or cattle ranches out there. And so we're blessed in Sarasota to have a truly unique, all kinds of lifestyles. People who grow our food live out there, and then we have our cities as well. And, just for the listeners to appreciate, since 1970, the Sarasota County Commission has been 100% Republican. And so for the past 50 years, the Republican primary, because there's a registration advantage, and in November, the past 50 years, the Republicans have been elected many, many times, and it's changing, but many times there were no Democrats running for county commission. But the election for county commission has really been in August for the past 50 years, because that's when we're choosing the Republican nominee.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So I have to start because you've said something I don't know about, and I need to ask you more about this. And it sounds familiar, not the incident itself, but the kind of gaming of the system. So you're telling us on this show that one of the reasons you decided to run for office is there's a development out east that was supposed to be building its own infrastructure.
Correct.
But instead of them picking up the tab, the utility department in Sarasota County took $5 million from their operating and maintenance budget and paid to build the infrastructure. I'm hearing that correctly?
Yes. So
Okay.
basically, it's a little more complicated than that. It always is, right?
Yeah, no, it is always more complicated.
So it's called Lake Park Estates. It was approved with the understanding that they would run the infrastructure from basically the Trade Center, the Founders Club, the water and sewer lines out to their development, which is the first hamlet in the county. So it's the first hamlet, and they met the requirements to get the optional overlay. So they were supposed to do that. That was approved, I think, in 2016, a number of years ago.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop you because you're talking land use planning jargon, but hamlet is a type of development that's permitted east of I-75, and an overlay is an option for development, right? Okay. So the 2050 plan, which was changed, this was one of the first hamlets, right? That's being built. Okay. So pick it up from there, and they're getting kind of a $5 million windfall. Tell us about that.
So they were supposed to pay for the run the lines, and sort of out of the blue, the utilities department suggested to the county commission that the county would run the lines, and in addition to running the lines, they would upscope them to bigger lines so that the future development would have the lines as big enough for them. The deal was that once the homes are sold, the homeowner will pay over the certain number of years to pay back the county their prorated portion of what the county spent. All right, so the developer, in effect, got off the hook for what he was supposed to do. The county's now on the hook. If the development fails, the county will get none of its monies back. The first leg of those pipes have been laid from around the Founders Club to Lorraine Road because of another development that's going in. So they went ahead and put those pipes in so that they wouldn't have to dig up the road in the future.
Okay. Mike, how did you find out about this? Because that's a tough thing to track. How did you come to know about it?
A friend clued me in. I'm not sure how she found out.
Okay. Yeah.
You know Susan Shetley?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So somehow
Absolutely.
it stumbled across her desk, but we didn't find out until months later.
Yeah, she was an attorney for she was a county attorney for a
Correct.
while, so I think she still has friends inside. Okay, well, this is the very kind of thing that, I've put out an ebook called Local Dark Money, and people wonder, well, if you may not know how much developer money goes into county elections. It's quite a bit, and that's the PAC money is what I track in this ebook. But these are the kind of benefits that developers are looking for from the county. It could be quite an effective return on investment to put in 10, 20, $30,000 into campaigns or PACs, and then realize infrastructure being paid for that you don't have to pay for anymore. So, um, yeah, okay, that's pretty eye-opening. The I want to shift to the pandemic, Mike, COVID-19, because local governments are being asked to make decisions about public health and safety. What is your take on how the county has managed this so far? And your position on masks. What should county commissioners be doing, beyond masks, if you have thoughts on that, but I am interested in your take on requiring masks in Sarasota County.
So yeah, as I said, I'm a Republican, so I'm usually for limited government. So far, I think the Sarasota County on the COVID thing has done fine. I don't have any major issues with them. On mask, my opinion on that is sort of the golden rule. You should do to others as you would have them do to you. So whenever you're in the appropriate situation, you should wear a mask. I'm not for mandatory mask. For instance, I volunteer at a place called Sarasota Technology Users Group Refurbishing Project. And for that area where we're working on computers, it's very not appropriate to wear masks. So there's a small group of us, and if it was mandatory that we would have to wear masks, it would make our life a lot more difficult. So when it's a business requires it, then you should absolutely follow what the business does. And you should always show courtesy to all your friends and neighbors and people you meet on the street. So if I go into Publix, yes, I'll wear a mask. But
Okay.
I'm not sure a private business internally should have to wear a mask.
Okay. All right. And this refurbishing I'm curious about the project. Is this to refurbish computers for
Sure.
schools, or how does
Yeah,
that?
there's project's been around for a long time. I got involved in 2008, and basically that project takes in donated computers, refurbishes them, and gives them out to people in the community that can't afford them, and that includes people from charter school students, nonprofits, the unemployed, the vets, and so
Mhm.
forth. We also worked with the school system the last few years to take school computers that are being surplused out, refurbishing them, and give them back to students in the school system.
Yeah. Oh, well, these days with online learning, it's going to be even more important that everybody have access to technology. So that sounds like a really worthy effort. So I wanted to ask you also, because this keep the country country. One of the big responsibilities in county commission, their purview, is land use. And the Sarasota County Comprehensive Plan provides for all kinds of land uses. The idea being we should have rural lifestyles and farms, and we should also have city lifestyles. And there's a benefit to the community in doing that. With the 2050 plan, uh, development rules out east used to be a lot more strict about what can go on there. So what is and in a way, people, there's a way that a lot of us watching the 2050 plan change. So the idea of that was basically to cluster development, kind of like European villages where you've got farmland around. That no longer is really the case. So I'm wondering, what are you doing? What can be done? What's behind this movement? Keep the country country. What's the goal?
Well, keep the country country is involved with what you said, but basically narrower. Some of these things are sort of water under the bridge, but the northeast corner of Sarasota County is one of the big last areas that's undeveloped. And currently it allows an overlay for hamlets. All right. And a hamlet was one of these little villages type things that you were talking about, smaller than a village, about up to 400 homes. And the hamlet, that area is allowed to have hamlets, but with one of the changes to 2050, like you mentioned, it's sort of been migrating. You can put hamlets side by side now. And so in that area, they were looking at putting in 6 to 8 hamlets side by side, which at that point, it's basically Lakewood Ranch. Okay. It's just wall to wall homes. So if you take 400 homes, multiply it by 6, you've got 2,400 homes. If it's 8, it's 3,200 homes. It's no longer just a small area that's clustered, because they've also reduced the green space between hamlets. So instead of having 500 feet of green space between the hamlets, it's now 50. So to keep the country country is for people that think that we should have some rural portions in Sarasota County. You mentioned that we were unique in that we were pushing for rural in the eastern county, whereas urban on the western county. And we want to keep that promise that was made to many Sarasotans that live out east years and years ago.
Okay. I want to ask you a bit. I realize this is more a question. It's a question for the sheriff, but I've been asking city commissioners. So running for county commission, we've had a moment in this country around policing and people being concerned and seeing the death of George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter movement, watching uses of excessive force that have become all too commonplace. And, as a county commissioner, what would you want to see and what would you do to address the issue, to ensure that our community policing is judicious and fair?
Well, that's sort of an interesting question, because we have a elected sheriff, and the sheriff is responsible to the people. So the first thing the people need to do is actually let their sheriff know, and if they're not happy with him, they need to vote him out. The county commission needs to provide oversight and financially to the sheriff's department. Personally, I think the sheriff's department in Sarasota has done a pretty good job the last few years. Doesn't seem to be a problem in that area of discrimination or whatever. I'm not aware of any anyway. And I think that we need to not discriminate against anybody. We don't need to have any kind of excessive force. But at this point, I don't think the sheriff's department has a problem.
Okay. A few years back, Mike, and this was regarding back when Paul Caragiulo first ran. So I believe that would have been 2014, around there. And Al Mayo was running for office as well. The Sarasota County Commission took a lot of their emails offline. It used to be that you could see pretty much all the emails that were sent. There was a portal that you could go to, and you could just see what people were asking the county commissioners. They changed that to where it's only if they answer, it became a lot more restricted. And at that time, people like me and other people asked the candidates, what about restoring transparency? What about having a portal? Because of course, in Sarasota County, we have the Sunshine Law and Public Records Law, and actually all these communications are public record. What are your thoughts about that and just improving transparency for the county commission?
Right off the top, I'm for more transparency. I find that the website's difficult to go through it and find what you're looking for. So it's hard to know what the county's doing. So generally speaking, I'm for as much transparency as we can have. I really believe that the people should know what's going on. In fact, that's one of the reasons I'm running is that somebody needs to shed some light on what's going on. This issue I mentioned about the $5 million, that should have been out for the public to know about. It shouldn't have been hidden away and not known until somebody that I guess in the inside let it out to the outside. I'm not even sure how it got out.
Yeah. You know, Mike, one of the things I've talked about a lot on this program is municipalities all over the country. It's easy to build something, but maintaining it and funding the operations and maintenance of our infrastructure is a problem nationally. We Americans love to make something new, but we're seeing crumbling infrastructure, partly because of the way we build. Sprawl development doesn't generate enough tax revenue to pay for the services that it requires. And so the first 8 years look great because there isn't much maintenance required. But then after that, it's almost, you have to keep building new. It's called the sprawl Ponzi scheme, or the growth machine. People have written about this. Strong Towns is a great blog by Charles Moran where he talks about this, he and his coworkers. How do you plan to, because what you're talking about was like, you know, stealing from the operations and maintenance. And my other understanding, and Charles Moran talks about, just look at all the capital projects in any municipality and see if they can possibly be funded. The things that need to be built in the future that are being planned and promised, and see if your budget actually covers them. And he's saying there's no way that the list is a lot bigger. Have you looked at that capital projects list? Is it something you've considered, and what does it look like to you?
No, I haven't looked at in detail at the capital plans. Okay, I've more looked at what's sort of going on at the moment, the current stuff. And but yeah, that's an issue that I'm going to have to get up to speed on. Like I said, I'm sort of new at this, so that's an area that I'm pretty weak on at the moment.
No, that's okay. I'm just curious because, again, I think it's actually difficult to get that information. You know, one of the issues in Sarasota is it's not so easy to really get a handle on what's happening here. So
I agree.
You're being new to this is not necessarily the reason why you might not know. Again, well, this has to do with public input. You know, the Sarasota County Commission a few years back reduced the number of speakers that could give input before a meeting, you know, saying they didn't want to clog up the meeting. But this is one of the few effective ways the public has to register their discontent if there's a problem. Would you take a look at that again? How would you improve the communication between the county commission and the public?
That's a good question. I know that when I've gone to the county commission meeting to voice my opinion and so forth, I'm not real happy with the way that procedure works. I don't think all the information necessarily gets out, and the public, I think, is at a bit of a disadvantage. So yes, I agree that needs to be looked at. And maybe what we need to look at is some new modern tools that as additional ways to get the communications out. As a software engineer, I think there's probably some other options as well. But yes, I agree that needs to be looked at.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to remind our listeners that you can vote by mail under Florida law. Mike is running for county commission in the Republican primary, and that primary is August 18th. But under Florida law, all registered voters are permitted to vote by mail. Voters are encouraged to consider this option for the August primaries and the November general election, as the situation with COVID-19 may make people hesitant to go to the polls in person. You may request a vote by mail ballot in person, by mail, email, fax, or by phone. Only the voter or a designated member of his or her family or legal guardian can request a vote by mail ballot for the voter. To request a vote by mail ballot in Sarasota County, you can go to sarasotavotes.com or call 941-861-6000. That's 941-861-6000. And the last day to register to vote, not to get your mail-in ballot, but the last day to register to vote in Sarasota County is Monday, July 20th for the primary. I believe, you can still request your mail-in ballot far into the end of July. So, Mike, what are voters asking you when you're out there campaigning? There's the idea of running for public office, and then there's what it actually is. So what are you hearing from voters?
Well, actually, we're not out as much as we would like to be. That's one of the big differences that I'm seeing because of COVID-19. I expected to be able to go door to door and that kind of thing, and we're not doing that pretty much. But when I do talk to people, actually, most of them say that we need some change, and they're actually telling me that we need change in the county commission, that the development is a little bit too fast, that maybe I'm being polite there, and that the roads are overcrowded. We've got sewer problems. So they're actually telling me that things need to be done.
Okay. Yeah. And how are you connecting with voters? Is it word of mouth or Zoom meetings, or how's that working?
Yeah. So basically emails, that's one way. This day and age, we do email blasts. Actually, since I've been here since 1973, I have lots of friends and associates. So a lot of them reach out to me. The refurb group that I mentioned also has a shop, and so people drop in there and they'll see me and say, "Oh yeah, you're running for office," and we'll have some discussions there.
Okay. Well, Mike, one of the things I've done a lot of research on in Sarasota County is PACs and dark money. And I have put out an ebook just yesterday called Local Dark Money. And for the audience, you can find that ebook on Facebook at Citizens for Sarasota County. It's on my profile, but Citizens for Sarasota County is a public group. You should be able to access it even if you're not a member there. And it's a flip book, so it's pretty easy to look at. But it explains how much corporate money and private money from individuals is coming into our local elections. It's quite a bit. And so I'd like you to stay with me, Mike. And if you're just joining us, you're listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota, Florida, and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. Talking to Mike Hutchinson, who is challenging incumbent Mike Moran for the District 1 County Commission seat. So I'm going to share a screen for those of you who are watching online, and you'll be able to see a PAC called Florida Country. Whoops, actually, hang on a minute. Okay, Florida Country is here. This is a PAC that is administered by Eric Robinson, and it is, I'm just trying to pull it up on my screen so I can see it completely. Okay, can you see that, Mike?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so Florida Country, this is a PAC that at the end of a few days ago, this is changing on a daily basis, but it has $53,900. It's a political action committee that opened in February of this year. And this is a PAC that is putting out mailers right now supporting your opponent, Mr. Moran.
That's correct.
Yes. And so one of those mailers, before we get into who's funding it, it's lots of developer money, and even a dummy corporation in Delaware is funding this PAC, or a totally anonymous corporation. But the most recent mailer is talking about gun rights, which I always, this has happened before where PACs put out mailers about the Second Amendment. I'm just wondering your thoughts on that. I mean, I get rural voters certainly would like to ensure their Second Amendment rights. But it seems odd to me that this would be done in a county commission race. What do you have any take on these mailers?
That one I was real surprised at. Yeah, it's not a, I guess, pertinent issue to me. Yes, out east, we have guns usually because in my case, when a 5-foot rattlesnake showed up, I figured I needed a shotgun to take care of that. I can't have my dog bitten and so forth. But I don't see it as a county commission issue at this point.
Yeah. So, okay, Florida country, just walk the audience through this, and 53,900, the political mailers, 2 have gone out so far, and they cost about $5,000 a piece. Since we've moved to single member districts, the cost of mailers for a county commission race is going to be less. So there's enough money in there for 8 more mailers to support Mr. Moran. But $19,000 is in that pack from Benderson Development. Mr. Jim Gabbard, who wanted to put a industrial waste transfer facility on public land, buy the public land next to the celery fields and do that, he's got $5,000 in Florida country. Bill Merrill, $5,000. He's an attorney for developers. Carlos Baruf, through his company TransUnited Development, has $2,000 in this pack. Bo Medred represented, I believe it was Mr. Gabbard, when he wanted to do the waste transfer facility. Bo Medred has $5,000. William Sava, $5,000. Mattamy Homes, $1,600, and John Cannon Homes. And then the last chunk of money is from a Delaware corporation called it's spelled XAPA. So I'm going to say Zappa, XAPA. Nobody knows who they are. $5,000. And, if you think dark money is just about national or state elections, that's not true. We have it here. And you can see that this Delaware corporation is wanting to influence the Sarasota County race. I can tell the developer name who's missing. I won't say, but seems to me that might be, a reasonable guess as to who's behind this Zappa Corporation. What's it like running for office, Mike, when you see this kind of thing, this kind of money working against you?
Well, it's sort of interesting because I think with the new single member districts, this kind of thing's going to have less impact. Okay. It doesn't take as much money to run because you're not trying to influence the whole county. So my personal feeling is it's legal. I may not like it, but it's legal, and I'll have to do my best to win anyway. Yeah.
I think your point about single member districts it's huge and it's well taken, because with at-large voting, and Sarasota County voters approved single member districts for county commissioners in 2018. And that means only citizens in a district, they're the only ones who can vote for their county commissioner. Before, in any particular district, they only represented about 20% of the votes for their district to choose the commissioner. So it was really hard to, that phrase, throw the bum out if somebody was unhappy. And the example that I use, one of them is, Mike Moran did not listen to District 1 voters. I wish you were here to talk about that vote and explain to us why he supported Jim Gabbard putting an industrial waste transfer facility next to the celery fields. But District 1 voters didn't want that at all.
No.
And so it's encouraging to hear from a candidate that, I know you didn't run when it was at large, but covering 400,000 people. I mean, registered voters are about like 260, 280,000 in Sarasota County, but the population's 400,000, 410,000. And it's like running for Congress. It used to be with that large voting.
Correct.
So you're feeling you have a pretty good shot here.
I hope so. Without doing polling, I guess you're a little bit in the dark. But yeah, so this district is heavily rural now, and I felt for years rural Sarasota County has not gotten attention at the county commission. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully with the smaller district, we will be able to voice our voices and make an impact.
Okay. Well, Mike, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to take the rest of that half hour. That would have been, with the two of you getting equal time. I did want to kind of save that space, and hopefully Mr. Moran will come on, if he changes his mind. I want to thank you so much for running, for throwing your hat into the ring, and for speaking with us. I'm going to take the rest of the time to talk about dark money. But we're putting up on the screen your website. But why don't you tell the listeners how to get in touch with you? And last question is, why should District 1 voters choose you?
Yep. So the easiest way is the website, vote4mikehutchinson.net, where 4 is a numeric. So vote for Mike Hutchinson. I'm also on Facebook. And so you can, either one of those ways, get a hold of me. If you want to get to me directly, you can email me at mike@vote4mikehutchinson.net. And like I said, I'm running because at this point, I think somebody needs to shed some light on what's going on with the county commission. I think the development needs to be slowed down to match the infrastructure. I think things like the little deals on the side that seem to happen after a development is approved, where things change, need to be brought to light. And I think we need a little bit of different approach somewhat at the county commission level.
All right. Well, Mike Hutchinson, good luck to you. Thank you for joining us. We'll stay in touch. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy.
Absolutely. You're listening to The Detail on WSLR. And as I shared, my listeners, you all may be familiar with my research on dark money. I've done talks about dark money with Democrat groups, with Republican groups, with nonpartisan groups. And I've put the research together in an ebook. It kind of tells the story of how things changed locally in Sarasota and Manatee counties with Citizens United. We saw a big change in our local elections in terms of how much money has come in to political action committees. So what I'd like to do with the remaining time is to walk you all through some of those political action committees and what they, the money that's involved there. And if you're watching online, if you're watching on Facebook Live, you'll be able to see these packs that I'm talking about. And let me just see where we're at. Okay, we're looking at Making a Better Tomorrow. Now, Making a Better Tomorrow is the pack that, if you recall my interview in 2017 with Martin Hyde was running for the city commission. And Martin Hyde, I asked him about a $4,000 donation to Making a Better Tomorrow. And I was asking him because I was concerned that I didn't understand why a candidate could donate to a PAC. They're not supposed to do that. But his money was in there with Benderson and Jim Gabbard and Carlos Baruf through Medallion Homes, other players. And the bottom line is he basically described a violation of election rules, of election law, because his donation was a mechanism to get funding to the GOP to fund a political mailer, identifying him as a Republican in a nonpartisan city commission race. They're not supposed to be identifying yourself as a candidate by party in nonpartisan races. So Making a Better Tomorrow is actually currently, as far as we know, under investigation. And it's a PAC run by Eric Robinson, but it's under investigation for this campaign finance violation. Now, the $4,000 went to Making Better Tomorrow. And then on the same day, February of 2017, another PAC, Legal Reform Now, donated $4,000 to the Republican Party. So the money jumped from one PAC to another, actually without a transfer. There was no transfer from Making a Better Tomorrow to Legal Reform Now. And Making a Better Tomorrow is a political committee, and political committees can advocate for candidates and issues. They basically have a full spectrum of activity. Legal Reform Now is an ECO, which stands for Electioneer Communications Organization, and they're not supposed to be advocating for or against candidates. So moving money from a PAC to an ECO is a no-no. You're not supposed to do that. And that did not happen here, but it was clear that on this magical day in February of 2017, that $4,000 did show up and go to the Republican Party, as Mr. Hyde explained he was told would happen by the Jack Brill, who is with the Sarasota Republican Party. I also want to point out with Making a Better Tomorrow, so there's still an investigation underway because Martin Hyde paid a fine and said, yep, I take responsibility. I made a mistake here. He said he didn't know, he wasn't aware. The handbook spells all this out, the candidate handbook. Jack Brill for the GOP paid a fine, but Eric Robinson said he would fight it, that he didn't know anything about anything, he didn't do anything wrong. And the attorney for the complainant has told me he's heard no resolution, that this is underway. It's still underway. I have a request in with the state as well for information. I haven't heard back yet. So the other piece to notice about Making a Better Tomorrow and the magnitude of the money here, if you can't see this yet at home, I hope you, if you're listening, Making a Better Tomorrow has nearly $1 million in donations. And the magnitude of the money that goes into influencing our local elections, if you're not aware of it, is pretty staggering. It's a ton of money. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's a PAC, nearly $1 million. Robinson Hanks Accounting put $171,000 into Making a Better Tomorrow. This is the accounting firm at that time of Eric Robinson. This PAC was established in June of 2014. So claims that I'm just the accountant, I would love to have Eric explain, because I think voters deserve to know this donation. This is beyond just being the accountant. It's $171,000. But there's a payment here from Making a Better Tomorrow to a nonprofit called Florida Municipality Accountability Project. It's a $35,000 contribution to a nonprofit, which is pretty bizarre. I mean, you just don't see nonprofit contributions from political committees. That's really rare. So I want to move to Legal Reform Now to continue talking about this nonprofit. And I'm going to move to a different screen share. Legal Reform Now is a political, it's an ECO, like I said, an elections communications organization. And I'm pulling Legal Reform Now up for those of you online. You can see this. Okay. So Legal Reform Now has, what's odd about this is Legal Reform Now was also part of the election violation complaint that was filed due to Martin Hyde's $4,000 donation. And you can see that donation to the Republican Party of Sarasota is listed here and shown out of Legal Reform Now. But one of the this ECO was closed quickly in response, it seems, to the complaint. And the Florida Elections Commission said, well, we're not going to look at Legal Reform Now because it's been closed as an ECO. But it ran a $128,000 deficit. So it's a strange situation when you've got a political committee that's running a deficit. ECOs are not allowed to have credit cards. These types of committees aren't permitted to have credit cards. So how do you run a deficit? That's a question I think voters should know in Sarasota County. And getting back to this Florida Municipality Accountability Project, this is a nonprofit. And as I showed you, it got a $35,000 contribution from Making a Better Tomorrow. It's a nonprofit based in Venice, Florida. Glenn DeLima is listed as one of the officers of the registered agent. They got a $80,000 contribution for consulting, or payment for consulting, another $75,000 for a regular contribution. All told, these two PACs, Legal Reform Now and Making a Better Tomorrow, paid Florida Municipality Accountability Project $190,000. Now, this is a nonprofit that was based in Venice that is supposed to be about accountability in local government. I certainly would be interested in a nonprofit like that, and I know a lot of people around the county who would be interested in this nonprofit. I can't find anything that they actually did. What I did find on GuideStar is the address listed, and it is a Venice address, which is the same address as companies that are held by Eric and Christine Robinson. So I do think, as a candidate for school board, the payments and the provenance of this organization, Florida Municipality Accountability Project, which has taken in $190,000 from PACs run by Eric Robinson, which is listing an address on GuideStar as an address that belongs to Eric Robinson's companies. This should be explained. It's a lot of money. The deficit of Legal Reform Now should be explained. It's $128,000. And there are also consulting payments that are clearly going to Mr. Robinson, $45,000 out of Legal Reform Now. There is Sarasota Citizens for Our Schools, which is a PAC that's active in our school board elections. It's registered on the county website. Put in $35,000 to Legal Reform Now. There's a super PAC donation that went to Legal Reform Now, $5,000. This is not supposed to happen. Super PACs are not supposed to donate to ECOs, to these election communications organizations. That was returned, a $5,000 donation. But these irregularities ought to be explained. And you know, another PAC with a deficit that is run by Mr. Robinson was Citizens for Florida Prosperity. And the deficit there was $45,000. So I think it's a strange thing, you know, these PACs being so active in our local elections. For the uninitiated, when you're getting mailers in your mailbox and they're paid for by organizations called Citizens for Florida Prosperity. How can you argue with that name? It sounds entirely reasonable. And yet, it's not an independent organization. It's a political committee that is just a funding mechanism for, for getting out a particular message. So the last political committee, we just have a few minutes left. I'm going to end with this. Is called Citizens Have Rights in Sarasota. I'm going to put that up on the screen. Citizens Have Rights in Sarasota is a political committee. It's not registered with the state. It's actually registered with Sarasota County. And Citizens Have Rights in Sarasota took in $310,000. It took money in from Sarasota Demands Accountability. And this PAC chart really shows, over and over again, it's really the same players, group of people, developers, prominent developers in Sarasota County, the Gulf Coast Builders Exchange, Benderson. There's a consistent pattern of donations from Mr. Robinson's accounting firm, Pat Neal. Let's see that, who else? Henry Rodriguez, Bob Wechter. And I guess that's pretty good where we are. There's also donations from physicians in Naples, Florida. In fact, a Dr. Lionel King gave $108,000 to Citizens Have Rights in Sarasota. Now, the largest expenditure of Citizens Have Rights in Sarasota was a consulting payment to a firm, Robbie's LLC, and it's owned by Eric and Christine Robinson, for $140,000. So again, when you look at the magnitude of money involved in our local elections, where it's going, there are a lot of questions that I think it behooves candidates, and certainly these are fair questions for Mr. Robinson to answer and let us know what's going on with these PACs. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. You've been listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota, Florida, and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. I want to remind everyone that you can vote by mail. Under Florida law, voters are encouraged to consider this option for the August primaries and the November general election, as the situation with COVID-19 may make people hesitant to go to the polls in person. You may request a vote by mail ballot in person, by mail, email, fax, or by phone. Only the voter or a designated member of his or her immediate family or legal guardian can request a vote by mail ballot for the voter. To request this ballot in Sarasota County, you can go to sarasotavotes.com or call 941-861-6000. Our Supervisor of Elections office, 941-861-6000. They do a tremendous job. And regarding my questions about dark money, they get back to me almost immediately. They're terrific. The last day to register to vote to be eligible for the August election is Monday, July 20th. And I'll call an election in August because our school board race is going to be decided in August. It's not a primary for the school board. And also the sheriff's race is a universal primary, meaning everybody can vote for the sheriff. We've got two Republicans running, and they are Paul Fern and Kurt Hoffman. And so the sheriff's race, no matter what party you're involved in, if you don't have a party affiliation, the August election is going to be the election for school board, and it's going to be the election for sheriff. So make sure you're registered to vote and get that mail-in ballot if you choose. Given the public health threat, a lot of people are going to feel better voting by mail. So I want to thank you all for listening. Please check out my ebook. You can find it on my blog at thedetail.net, and make it a great day. Thank you so much for listening.